I have just replaced the handbrake band on this old International tractor. This one is a 574, but there are plenty of other models with a similar system, umpteen of them in fact. Lots of variations over the years, but as I say, this is a 574, so I thought it might be interesting to see how I did it. I tried doing it through the side and I gave up after 2 or 3 or 4 hours. I couldn't see what I was doing, I didn't know what I was doing, and God didn't intend us to do it that way. So now I'm going to do it the way we're supposed to do, from above. First things first, I'm going to take the link arms off just to get them out of the way. I'm going to take the diesel tank off. It has been off before, so that should be quite easy. 9/16 and 1/2 inch spanners, if I remember rightly. Take the seat out and take the console out. First job, don't do what John did, do what John says. Take the oil out. You will regret it if you don't. And then leave it to drip overnight. It will make the job a lot easier for yourself. But you do need to remove that cover from the side of the gearbox. So you might as well drop the oil out and do it straight away. Because if you don't, you'll be doing it when the floor's covered in oil. There are loads of variations of these tractors, but we have to take the lift cover off. This one's a 574, which is what this little video is about, really. Have to take a few pipes off, and we have to take the PTO actuating mechanism off, which is fastened on by 2 9/16 nuts onto the lift cover. And there's a clevis pin down there with a split pin in it. Well, as it turned out, I didn't actually have to take it off because it would have come off with the lift cover, but I would have had to undo that clevis pin at that end. Anyway, nothing's lost because it's a good time to clean it and lubricate it. There are 3 3/4 headed bolts in the middle of the lift cover, which look as if they should come out, but they don't need to come out, so don't disturb those. Now when you've undone all the others, 1/2 a turn, blow the whole thing down with compressed air to get rid of the dust that you've loosened. So undo the screws, but don't take them out of the holes because there might be different lengths, and also that's a really good way of dropping filth and grime down into the oil. You've undone all the hex-headed screws around the thing, 3/4 heads and 9/16 heads. Get a little lever under there and just break the gasket. So we've got the thing loose, now we need to lift it. What I have got is some nuts into which I've drilled and tapped a 3/8 UNC thread. Now if you're not the kind of a person that's a driller and a tapper, you can always weld a couple of nuts on. Weld the nuts on, 3/8 nuts onto the larger nuts, and then you've got lifting eyes. If you're the kind of person who's got nothing better to do, you can drill 6 different size holes in those nuts and thread them and put them in your toolbox and use them for lifting all sorts of things. They are handy, but I didn't put mine in the toolbox and so I couldn't find them. Right, we've got the lifting points for the engine crane now. So I'm going to sweep the floor and start to lift this thing. There is a rubber pipe just here at the front which will need undoing. Screwdriver on the Jubilee clip job. Turns out the 5 bolts around the front of the casing are all the same length. And my plan is to try and move the thing backwards without damaging these pipes. I'm just going to take this pipe off the, I think it's the pressure sensor for the hydraulics. And then, just when you think you're about to draw the thing off, you find you have to remove this little piece of sculpture here. and it unscrews from the block once you've undone the lock nut. And there is an O-ring on it, so just undo the lock nut enough to unlock it, and then unscrew the thing cautiously. But to unscrew it, you have to move the cover sideways towards the left hand side of the tractor so that you can avoid those pipes. When you are removing this thing with the pressure switch on it, it is easier if you undo just where my finger is, the vent or whatever it is onto the gearbox top, which is held on by a couple of 7/16 headed screws. It doesn't come right off, but it comes loose, and it enables you to put that piece of flexible rubber hose on and off far more easily. There are two dowels at the back of the cover, which it needs to be lifted over before you can slide the thing back. It's off. Now, it's taken me 3 hours to get to this stage, and I think even if I'd done it before, it would still probably have taken me 3 hours. It took me an hour to take the tank and the seat console out. It would probably have taken 2 hours to take those out if I hadn't had them off before. So you can say that it's a 4 or 5 hour job to get to this stage. Well, I'm back. Had my lunch. I never used to worry too much about tractor handbrakes because I lived in a flat place, but now I live here in Scotland. The only thing flat around here is the sea, and that isn't always that flat. You can take that from me, I'm a sailor. Well, these have a nice life. The only thing they have to worry about is Christmas. As you know, I gave up my attempt to replace this band from above, and now I can see why. They do say that if this clevis pin has been put in this way round, you can't get to the split pin to take it out. Now that makes sense. That's the pin I've just pulled it out, which was held in by the split pin in that fashion. Then I drew this pin out that way, which has released the brake band. There's not a lot for you to see down there, but that's what's happened. So now I can, you can pull the brake band up past the actuating mechanism, pull the handbrake spring out, and the whole thing is loose now. Now then, the brake drum is quite scored, but it would be, wouldn't it? Because there's no lining material left on it. Anyway, you're supposed to move the clutch pack forwards or backwards, but I'm going to see if it's possible to do it without. There is a roll pin which holds the PTO clutch in the correct place on the fast PTO shaft. With a suitably long drift, you can punch it out of the way. You can just about see it sticking out to the side there. Awkward little cuss at the back of this sprocket. It's coming out to the top now. There it is. I've punched it nearly all the way through. I didn't want it to drop out though. So I'm going to turn it until it's there in the drifting back in position, and I'm going to put a chalk mark on the shaft itself, so that I know which position it was in, so that I can drift it back in place. Then I undo these 3 bolts and withdraw the prop shaft, because there's a whole load of oil trapped in there which comes gushing out, probably a couple of pints. Well, the news is that even with the shaft out of the way, you can't move the PTO clutch pack enough to get this brake band off. It's not an easy job, this, is it? So I'm going to take that panel off the side of the tractor with the clutch out, and hopefully we should be on our way again. Plaque out of the way, withdrawn through the side of the tractor. It's an easy enough matter to bring that forward and bring it over the main shaft. And then we just reverse it and put the thing back together. But sensible people are going to take this handbrake cable off and check it's okay before they put the whole thing back together, because you'd be really cheesed off if you'd done a day's work and then snapped the handbrake cable. Right, problem 32Z. You put the mechanism for the handbrake back on, and the gap there, where my finger is too small for the new band to go past onto the drum. So I'm probably going to have to loosen this mechanism off. With that bracket moved slightly, just by undoing the 3 mounting bolts a few turns, you can slide the brake band on and off. So I think the procedure would be, if you were doing it from the side, to slide the thing off, turn it through 180 degrees and take that pin out, and then take it off the shaft and through the side, and the same to put it back on. You put the pin in, lift it up into place and slide it past the casting. Then we've got the problems of getting these clevises in, which is difficult enough from up here, so what the hell it's going to be like doing it from below, I do not know. The next job is to replace this pin, which wouldn't be too difficult to do from below, and I have used a tapered punch to line the holes up. Now the cable's connected up, the split pins are in. Don't do what I did and forget to put the spring in, or you have to take the whole blasted thing back out and start again. I've put the clutch pack back for the PTO, and now I'm going to just slide that PTO back in, drive the pin in and start reassembly. This roll pin is the very devil of a thing to get back in when the thing's in the transmission case. It has to align with that notch, which means that it has to be on the right spline. There are 3 little white seals on that front, which are for the brake lines, and there is of course the gasket. Now I'm not replacing any of these on the reassembly, because I was lucky enough to do very little gasket damage on the way out, so I'm simply going to put a bit of gasket seal around it and hope for the best. Now, one of the reasons that I'm not using a new gasket is because I don't have time. I need to use the tractor and I don't have time to wait for one to arrive. The other reason is because they're £40, and the other reason is I don't have a length of gasket material big enough. For these little seals for the brakes, I've had a look online and they charge a £5 each for them, and now they don't sell these white plastic things, they're just sending ordinary O-rings out. So I'm going to use the original ones, and I don't know whether these measurements will help anybody, but I hope they do. The counterbore is 9/16 in diameter. The hole in the middle of the seal is about 340 thou, and when they come out they are 85 thou thick. As for the gasket, in its compressed state it is about 30 thou thick, so those figures may just help somebody. These are all blind holes around the top of the casing, and they fill up with oil, so blow all the oil out of them before you reassemble, so that the bolts don't, one, hydraulic and two, squirt oil all over the place. So I can roll the cover into position on this rod. It's a piece of stainless steel which came out of a printer actually. Lifting the thing back in, if you suspend it the same way I did, a big pile of chain on the front goes a long way to levelling the thing up. An important bit of information for you. Put this bit back on before you've bolted the lid down, because if you don't it's really difficult to get back on because it crashes into those pipes. The last two pipes go from there to there, and remember not to put them back on until you put your seat console on. One of the good things about doing this job from the top is that it's a good time to have the opportunity to clean 40 or 50 years of rubbish out from underneath these consoles and tanks, to swill the tank out, to lubricate linkages, and don't forget to test the switch, the handbrake warning light switch. Because this job is such an extensive one, you really don't want to leave your handbrake on the very next day after you've done the job and ruin that handbrake bands. Now when you put the tank back in, don't tighten the nuts and bolts back up until you've got the seat console in. That goes in far more easily if there's a little bit of give there. Now while I've got your attention, I would just like you to put a little bit of grease on all the threads and all the nuts and bolts that you put back on, because it might just be me that has to take your tractor apart next time. Now I know my way around a toolbox and I am pretty well equipped, but this job took me 12 or 15 hours. It would probably have taken 10 or 12 hours, but you always find a few other jobs that need doing while you're doing a job like this, such as improving the handbrake linkage and tightening up the gear linkages and adjustments of other things and cleaning off. But there we are. It's not a job for the faint-hearted. Tools I used an engine crane to lift the top off, couple of shackles there, and lifting eyes, a piece of long link chain. Then I used 7/16, half inch, 9/16 and 3/4 inch sockets and some socketry, half inch, 9/16, 5/8 and 3/4 inch spanners. The 5/8 spanner was just for the adjuster on the handbrake cable. 7/8, 1 inch and 1 1/16 inch spanners for the hydraulic connections, and for the sump plugs you will need 2 of the 7/8 spanners, because there is one male and female fitting. A selection of screwdrivers, 1 or 2 of them actually got used for driving screws. I used a bit of brake cleaner, very useful to have a bit of acetone around just for cleaning bits and pieces up. Multimeter to test the brake light switch, a selection of pairs of pliers, including a pair of circlip pliers to take the handbrake mechanism apart, the handbrake lever mechanism that is, and a snap ring plier for the snap ring on the brake drum inside the gearbox. Now I would not take that snap ring off again. Don't do it unless you really have to. A couple of hammers, a 5/16 Allen key to take the top off the gear lever so that you can get the quadrant out, a chisel just for scraping gaskets off, a selection of levers and punches, and a bit of rod to rest the gearbox on when you're rolling it back into position. A tapered punch is handy, that big one there, just for lining the screw holes up when you're putting the tin work back together. I hope this helps you. There's a big pile of these clean buckets with clip-on lids, which I get from the bakers to catch the fuel and to catch the oil. I am going to reuse the oil because it was fairly new, so I wanted to keep it clean. I also got through a large bag of sawdust and a lot of rags. The conclusion here is that whilst it may be possible, I'm sure it is very possible on some models, to replace the brake band through the side of the tractor, I wouldn't even consider attempting it until I'd done it from above half a dozen times, because you can't see what you're doing and you really do need to know the layout of the thing. They're just my thoughts anyway. Well, it's official, I'm a bloody idiot. I should have remembered to bleed the brakes before I put the fuel tank back on. The job would have been so much easier. The bleed nipple is right in there, and the other one is in the same place at the other side, hidden behind a hydraulic hose. Silly me. Well now, thank the Lord, this job is done now. And if I ever get the dubious pleasure of doing this job again, I think I'll make a few changes. The brake lining on these bands is very thin, and it's glued on. So if the parking brake is left on and somebody sets off with the tractor, apart from the huge wrenching force on there, the glue will get hot, and I suspect it will very probably soon slip. So I think I would be inclined to line it with thicker lining material fastened on with rivets, which would probably mean extending the band by 1/4 of an inch or so, which wouldn't be difficult. But that's something to think about, because there is plenty of space in there, plenty of space to do it.